What is up, health enthusiasts? It's Coach Lamby here for Working Weights LLC, your guide to strength, health, and all things nutrition. I am joined as always by my co-host, Dwayne Ulrich, aka Poppy Dwirl.
Hey guys,
Today we are looking at food colors and autism. All right. So, Dwayne, last week we went down the rabbit hole that I fell into, which was the whole FDA committee hearing on this thing. And so this week we are exploring the rabbit hole that you fell down, which is
yes,
the link between artificial food colors and autism.
yes. I fell down that rabbit hole, and there's a plethora of sites and just commentaries, and then there's a lot of businesses that are out there to help families with autistic children, autistic family members, and on their sites they also will reference certain studies, certain meta-analyses, and some sites are way better than others. And then there are some sites that just, it seems like they just say whatever they can to, further their business. I mean, I'm just going to call that what I see, as I see
Mm-hmm.
it. One site that, maybe we'll get to talk about it, maybe not. I don't mean to really just be, I don't want to bash anybody's business, but they're into holistic healing and acupuncture and combining Eastern and Western, weirdness to, heal people of autism. I'm sorry, that's not the way it works. So,
Yeah.
one thing that is, for the most part, for studies that we've looked at last week for the ADHD, hyperactivity, as well as the things that I dove down into and swum around in all this last week and the week before, was that people with autism are born with it. And so, more often than not, scientific studies show that it's a result of genetics as well as some environmental factors,
Mm-hmm.
which could include, just maybe medications that the mom was on, or just, you know, um, well, there's a plethora
It's
of
multifactorial
it is
or
multifactorial,
multi-causal.
and none of it is linked to, convincingly linked to, artificial food dyes.
Mm. Yeah, so you sent me some stuff that you had looked at.
I did.
One of them was another 700-page document,
I am so sorry
which
about
I,
that. I tried to look at it, but I couldn't. It kept asking me for money. I'm like, what? Does he pay for this?
mm, yeah, so I do pay for some stuff, and I was able to open that thing up and look through it. Now, fortunately, I didn't have to read 700 pages worth of stuff because there was a good chunk of it that was dealing specifically with like uh what is autism and what are some diagnostic criteria used to to all of that
Right,
stuff. So
right,
I didn't
right,
have to read the whole thing.
right.
Um, one of the things that um, you sent me was a meta-analysis, and it was just the abstract, and that's the thing that you couldn't. Um,
I couldn't open that.
so yeah, so the abstract had no link to the full article, but then there was the 700-page document, which is kind of like a full comprehensive thing on autism and nutritional therapy in dealing with autism. And so that's the thing that I read, and that meta-analysis is in that document. And then there are a couple of websites that you sent, which I think one of them you just named. And in those websites, the references are basically that meta-analysis.
Right.
So, uh, before we look at that meta-analysis, do you want to like look at a website or anything? Is there?
I don't know if we need to do the whole look at. There is a couple of websites that I want to talk about, but
Hmm.
uh, just on that abstract, and the first thing that I sent you on that abstract, I just find it really interesting. that after all the stuff we worked through on that, well, there it is.
There
There
it
it
is.
is. So after all the things that we worked through with the hyperactivity and the ADHD things, it just amazes me that they say some of the things that they do. Um, Somewhere, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, okay. Appealing food colors stimulate the consumption of different foods. Since 2011, it's evident that dyes are linked to harmful effects in children. Okay, wow. Well, we dove so deep off into that. I mean, they had to pipe oxygen down to me when we were going through that the last week or so. It's like, holy moly, but it is evident. And then it goes on to say, many families with autistic children avoid food dyes in their diet in order to avoid behavioral issues. Maybe, maybe not. A study reported that there is a correlation between yellow dye and sleep disturbance. What study is that? Food colors blue 1 and 2, green 3, red 3, yellow 5 and 6, citrus red 2, and red 40 can trigger many behaviors in most kids. Many behaviors. I want to go down to the one below that. The US FDA is yet to study the effects of synthetic dyes on behavior in children.
Yeah. And you can see in my notes right here, uh,
Yeah, the meeting,
the
2011.
the meeting, yes. So how is it that since 2011 we know that it's evident that there is a link?
Exactly.
What happened in 2011 that allows us to draw that conclusion? Yeah, so this sentence here, it's evident that dyes are linked to harmful effects in children, which I actually don't have a problem with that sentence. I think that it is evidence that there is a link.
Okay.
However, we have something that we call a correlation, and that's what
Yes.
it's saying. There's a correlation
Okay.
there. So it's not saying that it's evident that food dyes cause
Right.
harmful effects, but there is
Right.
a link between them. And so, we can have a correlation. Does that mean that there is a causal inference there? No, that's not what that means.
Right.
There are
Right.
there are things called spurious correlations, and there's a website that we can look at. Let me see, we'll just look at websites right now. We'll go back and forth.
Cool. 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 And I did want to read that last. I
Safari.
did want to read that last line. I've got it right here in front of me. It
Okay.
says the research does not prove that food coloring actually causes autism spectrum disorder, but there seems to be a link.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
all right, all
Let's
right.
see. Let's go. Spurious correlations. Okay. So, yeah. So just because there is a link between two things does not mean that we can draw causal inference. This website, Spurious Correlation, shows us that there are correlations between things that are spurious. Right. You can draw a correlation. There is a link there, but that doesn't mean that we can say that one thing causes the other. And so we have associate degree awards in visual and performing arts and Google searches for zombies. Now you can see this graph here. The two things correlate, right?
That's beautiful, man.
Air pollution in Manchester, New Hampshire, and
Oh
Google
my
searches for
gosh.
how to treat internal bleeding. Look at these two
Yes,
things.
man.
So Are
Sheesh.
are Google search or rather is the air pollution in Manchester, New Hampshire leading to Google searches for how to treat internal bleedings? There's a correlation here.
There is a
There
correlation.
seems to be a link.
There, absolutely.
Yeah.
But to the thinking individual, I don't know. Not really sure.
Hmm.
So, what I also found then was that this particular study it cited some meta-analyses of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity sort of symptoms, restriction diet, and synthetic food color additives. So they cite that, but it never that study, at least I didn't see it. Maybe you did, Coach. Is that they're drawing information on autism, and I never really saw that in that study. So maybe I'm wrong. Did you see it?
Um, where does it say? I know exactly what you're referring to. I'm just trying to find it in
Yeah, so
here.
the studies that I'm looking down there, so I ultimately found like maybe 10 or 12 studies that they
Oh,
cited.
this 2012 meta-analysis.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. So
And
the
there were only,
2012 meta,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead, go
there were
ahead.
only 2 or 3 studies that were cited that had anything to do really with autism. And that was NIG, the one by Burgess, Stochesky, and Kuschek. And that's the only ones that I found within their citations.
Yeah. So I didn't look at too much more than there's a few meta-analyses and reviews within this huge document.
Yeah, yeah.
And I looked at everything that I felt pertained to um, the link between food dyes and autism.
Right.
And so this 2012 meta-analysis, we can just click on this. It's reference 9, and it's this one, NIG
Yep.
et al., right? Meta-analysis of a, and we looked at that.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and
We
so what
did.
I found between y- the websites that you sent, what is um, what is included in this big document on autism and nutritional therapy. And then there was a couple other things that I looked for on my own. And what I'm seeing here is that there does not seem to be a large body of evidence here
No,
to me.
no.
And every single review, analysis, article keeps saying that there's a continuously growing body of evidence that's piling up. Well, what I'm finding is that along with the ADHD stuff, and most of it is stuff that we looked at in that first episode, there seems to be about maybe 20 control trials that everyone references. And then after that, there's a few meta-analyses that look at those 20 control trials. And then after that, all the meta-analyses and reviews that come after that, everyone's just referencing those same 20, and then they're referencing one another. So
Right, 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 right.
it's not that the research on this is growing and continues to add to this. It's that just people continue to write the same thing. We're just adding the same article. It's like, photocopy, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy,
Right,
paste.
right.
Everybody keeps saying the same thing. Everyone keeps referencing the same studies, and then it'll reference, this meta-analysis over here that reference those same studies. And so it looks like there is a growing body of evidence, but there isn't.
Exactly, exactly. So one of the things that was also cited was a study by, well, that study I told you about, Burgess, Sochelsky, and Kuchek. That study only discussed the amounts of sugars and artificial food dyes that
Right.
children consume. It has nothing to do with anything else. Um, you saw on that list also the study by McLean.
McCann.
Uh, is it
Yep,
McLean?
right
No,
here.
this is no. Is it McCann or
Hmm.
McLean?
Yeah, McCann. McCann is the one, the Southampton, where they
Yes,
had the
yes, yes, yes,
3-year-olds and
yes,
the 8 and 9-year-olds. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. So one of the things that came out of that was I'm just going to read this one line. It's like, however, intellectual. So basically, it just says there's not a lot of direct evidence in ADHD, et cetera, food dyes. But this came out. I thought this was really interesting. However, intellectual abilities may be an important consideration for practitioners in the differential diagnosis process as children with ASD, autism spectrum disorder, exhibited significantly less inattention and hyperactive impulsive behaviors.
Hmm.
I was like, that's great. So all these other kids are going crazy, but the ones with autism are like, they're just measuring it like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny.
Yeah,
Didn't,
so the conclusion that I came to after reading all this, and let me see, there's this one, there's this review which was above it, Autism and Diet, and they go over gluten-free therapy. There's another one below it.
Mhm.
And so kind of what I came away with here is that the link between food dyes and autism really is being drawn through the research on food dyes and ADHD. And the only link that they're making is that some children with ASD tend to exhibit some ADHD behaviors.
Yes.
So, not that they exhibit enough ADHD behaviors to be clinically diagnosed with
Right.
ADHD by the
Right.
DSM-5, but
Right.
just
Right.
that some of those behaviors are there, and that's how they're drawing the link between the two.
Right.
And I don't see that there really is, other than that, there doesn't seem to be a link between ASD itself
Right.
and the
Right.
food colors.
I agree. The only other link that I saw there, and I have several other interesting points over here, but the only other thing that I really saw was that people with ASD tend to have, um, or it, it's not a huge number, but it is more. They see this more an allergic reaction to certain foods. Those may or may not be because of red dyes, or no, not red dyes, but of artificial food colorings. But they are more susceptible to allergic reactions to some foods.
Hmm.
I thought that was interesting as well.
Hmm. Yeah. And so that also links back to everything we've read before where
Yeah.
um, you know,
Yep.
there does seem to be some type of an allergic type of reaction
Right.
for some individuals, right? It's reasonable and it's plausible to suggest that some people may be allergic to some of these red dyes. Now we can't say all, or I'm sorry, red dyes, but artificial food colorings, dyes themselves. Some people may have allergies to some of them, and some may have allergies to some others. We can't say a blanket statement for all of them because these dyes are not, they're not chemically the same things,
Right.
right?
Right.
So yeah, so yeah, in this big document, that's kind of a big deal is the allergic reactions, and there does seem to be a benefit for some children when they exclude certain things that people find uh many common allergies, so they limit some wheat, barley, and rye, so there's the gluten allergy
Yes.
type of thing.
Yes. Yes.
So there
Yes.
may be some relation between what's it called? Not Crohn's, celiac and autism.
Celiac disease.
Yeah, so
Yes.
celiac disease seems to be more prominent in ASD. So there could be gluten allergies there. There may also be certain protein allergies. So
Yep.
some diets eliminate milk and
Yep.
could be potentially be because of the casein, could be
Right.
potentially because of lactose as well.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I definitely think like that makes perfect sense. Um, in so how far we've gotten in this dive into the food colors and these issues, it really seems to me that this seems to be a either you're excluding a certain allergen from the diet and that's where we're finding benefit, or there was a nutrient deficiency, right? And so when you stop a diet that's high in artificial food colors and you go to something else, an elimination diet that's probably, you're not probably, but is going to be higher in whole foods and grains and more fiber and, all of that stuff, is that now we've rectified that nutrient deficiency and that's where the benefit is coming from. And so most of that is going to come from eliminating foods that contain artificial colors, which for the most part are going to be nutrient deficient, ultra processed foods.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
and so that's where we're finding the link. It seems to me that that is the case.
Right.
So when like I said before, I think in the first one, I think the artificial food coloring is just a proxy for a lower
Well put.
quality diet.
Well put. Well
And
put.
that's where the link is.
I agree. That's well put. So, for example, if you're if your kid is just if your kid is all into Fruit Loops, that's not really a nutrient high diet item, or Pop Tarts or Skittles. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
when you eliminate those things, or at least limit those things from the kid's diet, then guess what? And you start adding more nutritious things, then you know, yeah, that's I think that the like you just said, that the dyes are a proxy, or it's just something that's, hey, it
It's,
just
yeah.
happens to be there, but it's not the main thing. It's not the main issue.
Yeah. I think that it's acting as a proxy. Now, reading through this nutritional therapy information for autism, so I did come up with so one of the main things is all of the potential problems that have not been addressed in the way a lot of these studies are being performed, right? So we've come up with issues of blinding. Um, we have the issues of nutrient deficiency, and so by
Right,
supplementing certain
right,
nutrients, we can see that either behavior decreases or um, looking at some new stuff here, the amount of medication required to achieve the same level of behavior reduces. Um, so it's going to be hard to design a study. Everyone keeps saying that we need more research. I think we both agree, but it's going to be hard to come up with an actual uh, study design that's going to answer the questions that need to be answered because one of the main problems that I have with a lot of the studies, and I looked at a new one here. This is the Inca trial.
right, right,
So
right, right.
restricted elimination on the behavior of children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And this one is kind of like they took the children, put them into two groups. One was kind of on a standard diet, and the other one was on a an elimination diet. And the elimination diet was individually tailored to each child.
Yes,
And um, uh, parents received individual support from dietitians and stuff. And so, they did find significant reductions in behavior. So we have parental score and teacher score. And
right.
so the diet group here, we can see, from the start, we have a 45.3 ending 21.1. And for teachers, we can see that there's quite a reduction there and not so much in the control group. But when we look at the methodology, they admit that because the restriction diet
It
is
was individually
individually
tailored.
tailored,
Right, right,
that there was no way to mask or to blind the fact, right? So it just like
and you
in
couldn't use
in
it, and you couldn't use a reliable placebo either.
right, and they can't use a reliable placebo because it's individually tailored. And so you can't mask the parent from knowing that their child's on a restriction diet. You
Right,
also can't mask in the control group that their child is not on a restriction diet. And then the same thing went for the teachers. Why they couldn't mask the teachers to this, I don't know. But it says it right here, right? Uh, because the diet was individually tailored and restricted, a placebo diet was not possible. Thus, parents and teachers could not be masked to group allocation.
right,
So, that may be the reason why we're seeing significant reductions in both parents and teachers in this trial. But,
right.
the same thing keeps happening. We have these issues with blinding, and it's going to be hard to design a trial where you would actually be able to blind parents to try and eliminate this placebo by proxy um, effect because you can't lie to the parents about what you're giving
Right,
their kids, right?
right, right, right. I
Yeah,
have
and
some.
and
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
especially if you are going to introduce challenges, during this trial where they would get
Right,
artificial food coloring, like the parents have to be aware that the child is potentially getting food coloring, so you can't lie to them about that.
right.
So it's going to be hard to design the trials needed to answer a lot of these questions.
Yep.
But looking at, so dealing with autism, so children with ASD, specifically with their diet, tend to have issues with texture and
Yes.
consistency and
Yes.
color. And
Yes.
so something that came to my mind is that, while they're using these elimination diets and they're feeding them more whole foods, less processed foods, and blah blah blah, and we're getting rid of artificial food coloring that way. Something that may be a benefit is to design a diet that would or would not include artificial food coloring, that is almost 100% ultra processed and fortified. That way, they're meeting all of their nutritional needs.
Yes.
The
Yes.
textures and everything would be consistent throughout
Yes.
all these foods. So we bring up the case of like Fruit Loops or something,
Right.
right? You fortify Fruit Loops, and we're making sure that the children are achieving nutritional adequacy. Um, and you could have one part of the diet where it does contain artificial food colorings, and one part of the diet where it does contain natural food colorings. And something could be done in that sense.
One thing I wanted to say also is, uh, so I have some knowledge about statistics and how it's done, and unfortunately, statistics can be manipulated, not actually
Hmm.
changing numbers, but changing sections of numbers or the reporting periods, and you can sway somebody or a group of people to believe kind of what you want them to believe. For example, if I say, so in a neighborhood where there hasn't been a burglary in 10 years, and then recently then there's a burglary. Okay, statistically, that went up. Burglary went up how much? 100%. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that looks terrible. 100
Yeah.
burglary is up 100% when it's
Yeah.
just one when it's always been zero. So that's just an example. One of the things that I wanted to say though, and what brings me to that point is when the parents and these teachers are monitoring the activity of these children, especially in the terms of an ASD, autistic child, and you had mentioned textures and even flavors, sometimes colors.
Hmm.
But to get an autistic child, depending on where they are on the ASD, on the spectrum, getting them to change their food habit can
Yeah.
in itself
Yeah.
cause a reaction because they're used to a certain thing, and then you introduce a food that has a different texture, a different flavor, a different color. If it's outside of their routine, or say they drink milk, but you're going to change them over to like uh, almond milk or something, it's not going to taste good. It's out of their routine, and they will react to that.
Hmm.
So it's hard to get an actual feel for what's happening. So when they became more hyperactive when they're on foods with dyes in them. Well, maybe not because of just on the nature of an autistic person and how they eat and how they perform their daily routine.
Yeah.
So that's important to me. I just wanted to make that a point.
Yeah. I think it's going back to the FDA committee hearing. So there was the representative from the food color industry, and he was asked, have you guys done any further research? And he was kind of like, no, we would like to have some criteria from scientific and political bodies that we can go on in order to design these trials that you guys are going to accept the outcomes for and accept the methodology as being sound, something that we can, reliably do to try to repeat the results, right? Because you can't just do one study and be like, well, there it is. You have to repeat the results. Um, So yeah, I think that doing it, it's gonna take a whole bunch of money, and we have done stuff before,
Yes.
particularly looking at ASCVD and CHD, coronary heart disease, and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. We have something like the LA Veterans Trial where they actually ended up designing new foods. And we talked about this before, where they went in and they removed the specific fat type from a
Right.
milk
Right. Right.
and replaced it with so they removed the saturated fat from the milk, replaced it with polyunsaturated fat. You also have like muffins, so you can put one type of fat or something in one muffin, one type of fat or something in another muffin, and that kind of helps with blinding. Um,
Right.
but I do think in order to answer these questions, it's going to cost a lot of money because I think that we're going to have to create foods in order to effectively answer a lot of the questions that need to be answered,
Right.
which is going to be hard to do. It's hard to create a new food. So,
Right. I agree. I agree. One of the things that I came up with through just reading several of these studies, as well as some of the websites, one website I found particularly helpful was Cross River Therapy.
mm,
Um, they're an organization that their business is to assist parents in navigating being a parent with an autistic child, giving advice on food choices, which Coach Lamby's already mentioned many of them that are highly recommended, and moving through that. And then one of the things that I
it's this
came
one.
out of there, yes, Cross River, very very good. And this whole section, this red dye cause autism, it's excellent. One of the things they say in there, or I can't remember exactly where it is, and it's also said in a another website called Very Well Mind.com, and this sentence popped out at me. Autistic people are born autistic and they remain autistic for their entire lives.
Yeah,
So people
there's no
shouldn't
getting
get
away
the
from it.
right. There's no getting away from it. So just don't want people to get confused that, oh, if I take red food dyes, I mean, if I take not just red, but if I take food dyes out of my child's diet, that they're not going to be autistic, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So we're basically, these studies are basically just working with behaviors, and an autistic child, or anyone that's on that spectrum, they have habits, and um, they just have preferences that, man, if you take that away, it's almost devastating to them,
hmm
depending on where they are on that spectrum. So, but yeah, and I looked at those sources there too that you just showed that page on.
Yeah. So I just want to bring this up. So let me see. That meta-analysis that we just looked at is called
Right.
Food, Color, and Autism, a meta-analysis.
Yes.
And so this is the website you were just talking about, Cross River Therapy.
Yep. Yep.
And so we look at their sources and we have Food, Color, and Autism, a meta-analysis.
Hmm.
So the first link links us to that meta-analysis. The second link is this one here, and they basically reference the thing we looked at before, and
Yep.
then this one, which was basically the whole big document that we looked at. And
Right.
then we have this third reference here, which is the same
CS.
meta-analysis.
Yeah. Exactly.
So they have the meta-analysis linked twice,
Right.
right?
Right.
We'll go to this next website. This is a completely different website. What do they reference? This meta-analysis that we looked at.
Right.
And then they have a link to another article. And again, this is a blog post, and blog posts are opinion pieces.
Exactly.
So take what's said in here with a grain of salt. But going through all of this stuff, this is loading slowly. Anyway, that references the same meta-analysis. We have this is another one that you sent me, and going
Yep.
down to
Yep.
their references.
Yep.
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? All right. So what do we have? Food, color, and autism, and
Meta-analysis.
meta-analysis. And so they have the same thing where they've linked this meta-analysis twice. And then you have this autistic diet, right? So this takes us back to this one.
Yeah. The same meta-analysis is referred
Yes,
to in several different areas. So
yes,
if they use the Europe PMC, guess what? The Europe PMC is goes back to the meta-analysis. I had so many tabs at the top of my computer, and I was going, I'm losing my mind. Where am I? And I just had to close all the tabs and start over. And I started realizing that, whoa, it's just like almost like inbreeding because they're all just married to the same
yeah,
meta-analysis, and they're all making different conclusions.
right. Um, yeah. So this kind of so I think, to wrap up the whole food
Yes,
coloring and
yes,
effects on children, I think we already
yes,
said it before. I think the food coloring is just acting as a proxy for a nutritionally deficient diet. And in that case, dealing with um, a family who has a child that may have ADHD or ASD, if are looking to eliminate food dyes as a source of this thing, I think that we have different things to talk about rather than the food dye, right? Eh, Looking at an overall entire dietary approach rather than saying, oh, the food dye is causing this thing. Um, that's what it seems to me. So
right.
that's kind of my conclusion on this thing. Um, I'm not saying that people won't experience some benefit because they have removed food dyes, and a diet is a concept of displacement. Whatever I'm eating now displaces something I could be eating instead. And
Yes,
so when you make substitutions, when you substitute um, gummy bears with grapes and strawberries, that's a significant increase
huge,
in the nutritional
huge.
sufficiency of that child's diet,
Right,
right? So
right.
do I think it was the sugar and the food coloring? No, I don't. I don't think that that was that at all. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's not to say, and there was even talk by the guys from, or the representatives, I'm sorry, from the Feingold Association and
yes,
the CSPI, where they say if people go, or if we put these children on these elimination diets and symptoms improve, they actually can have these foods every, infrequently, that do have artificial food colorings and stuff. And so it just seems to me as like, well, this is no different than the dietary guidelines.
yes, yes.
The
I'm,
current recommendations are what you should be following. And it's not
yes,
that artificial food colorings are causing it. It's just that your child was eating a nutrient deficient diet and you switched to a nutrient sufficient diet and you saw benefits.
right. And I want to say that that applies also to the whole ADHD thing or the hyperactivity thing. It's
Mhm.
like, you know, t when you're eating that, when you're eating Twizzlers and gummy bears, when you could be eating fruits
Yeah.
and decent foods, that isn't. I guarantee you, there's going to be a behavior difference.
Yeah.
There just is. And there's parents going to be that if they listen to this, some of them are going to get wound up about, you're saying I'm not feeding my child right. That's not what we're saying. We're saying
Right.
that gummy bears versus grapes, strawberries, blueberries, which is better for your child, you know?
Yeah. And not to say that your child can't have gummy bears every now and then.
Right,
However, to draw the conclusion that the food coloring is the thing leading to the, I don't think that the evidence is
right,
there to support that. Is
right,
there a correlation? Is there a link? Sure, there is, right? Because it's in the food, it's what you're consuming.
right.
Yeah. So that's that.
Good.
And then we look at, yeah, so that's my conclusion after, gosh, I think we may have 60 or 70 hours combined
Yes,
between the two of us of research on this.
yes,
Just
yes,
from my side of this thing, that's where I stand on this. Do I think that they're causative? No. May you find a benefit? Sure. But I don't think it's because of the food colorings. I think that if we were to create a diet that was highly processed, contained some added sugar, contained artificial food colorings, but provided all of the nutrition that a child needed. I'm willing to bet money that if you put that as an intervention in a child, you would see benefits.
Yes, I agree.
I don't have a doubt in my mind.
I agree completely.
So that's where I stand on this. Now, looking at all of these websites, and I just went through the whole thing, clicking on this, that one, and they all link back to each other, and they're all referencing this one or two studies. And then we have the same thing happening within the scientific literature. They're all referencing these 20 or so control trials, and then they're all referencing each other, right? It talks about, oh, a meta-analysis done in 2012, this meta-analysis, that meta-analysis. They're all referencing the same thing. It's all the same paper.
Yes.
But, and then after hearing you read some of this today, so I got the idea maybe for another little series that we can do starting next week,
Okay.
which is on how to know stuff. So I think that there's a major problem happening where people are relinquishing their critical thinking skills to bloggers and YouTube, what are they called? Influencers,
Influencers. That's
social
right.
media influencers. People are relinquishing their critical thinking skills to these certain individuals who are putting out social media, and they're just accepting what they take as fact. And what I
Yes.
deal with a lot, and I have come up with this saying, is when somebody makes wild, just outrageous claims on the internet, and I say, hey, listen, here's an alternative hypothesis. You're just repeating what you heard someone else say, and you don't actually know anything about this topic. And I think that gets to a bigger part of the problem in dealing with this stuff. So,
Yes.
what do you think? Maybe doing a little series going forward. So, what I would like to do is
I'm
maybe
in.
introduce some entry level concepts that I use, and I really went kind of above and beyond in this meta-analysis, particularly this abstract, because what a lot of people do online is the evidence-based influencers will cite an abstract. People are just reading the abstract and the conclusion. No one's going in depth into these research papers the way we are here. And so they'll come away with certain things. So what I did here is I highlighted some stuff and put it on the side. So we have this sentence: autistic spectrum disorders and ADHD are complex conditions in which nutritional and environmental factors play major roles. I have the word major highlighted in red. And over here, I have that this is just speculation.
And it's inflammatory.
Yes. So that's speculation here. All right. So we have this next sentence: artificial dyes have neurotoxic chemicals that aggravate mental health problems. And again, speculation,
Yep.
because we don't have evidence to sufficiently draw the conclusion that they cause that, right? That these chemicals are actually neurotoxic and that they actually aggravate mental health problems. There is no evidence to support that. Everything you'll read says actually otherwise. There we found a link, but we can't say that it causes this. Many families with autistic children avoid food dyes in their diet in order to avoid behavioral issues. This is an appeal to anecdote. This is a logical fallacy. And I think that it happens a lot where people will read something like this abstract. Maybe someone will reference this, right? All food coloring is a cause of autism. Well, how do you know that? They'll send this link to the abstract the way that you found it. You can't access the whole paper. And so they'll read this and think, because these people are PhDs or they're getting their PhDs, and because they have published this, because it has been peer reviewed, that therefore this must be high quality evidence. And there are a lot of people who are very, very smart who publish high quality evidence, and there are a lot of idiots.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
So not realizing that this sentence in here is an appeal to anecdote and is a logical fallacy, someone may take away the wrong conclusion here.
Yes.
We have a study reported. You read this. Okay. So a single study is the evidence you're providing on this with the yellow dye and the sleep disturbances?
Can I
Okay.
interject something right here,
Yeah, go ahead.
Coach? So we're not saying that our listeners are unintelligent. We're
No.
saying that don't accept things for the face value, and things that you may not even think about it when you're reading it. For example, extensive scientific research,
Hmm.
um, numerous scientific studies, a study published in the Journal of Autism Developmental Disorders. Which study?
Yes.
A comprehensive review published in Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunity.
Yes.
Which one? What was it? What did it
Yes,
say?
and quantifying those words. What do you mean by extensive? What do you mean by numerous?
Yes.
What do those words mean? Yeah, so I thought this would be great idea to introduce a few things that I utilize. So number one, we might learn how to read a paper.
Right.
Number two, I would like to introduce some concepts of formal logic. And then number three, being able to identify um, part one of number three would be logical fallacies, and then part two would be able to deconstruct a sentence or a claim, based on the what's the word for it? The syntax,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Right.
actually being able to break a claim down or break a proposition down into the components to understand if there actually is a valid and sound argument being made. Does this person even know that they're making an argument or not?
Right. Right.
Does this person actually know what the argument is that they are making?
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right.
I think that that might be a fun little series to do going forward.
I think that's a great thing to do. I'm all in on it as well. And so for those of you listening, I mean, this is kind of what we've done from the beginning. Is there's
Hmm.
maybe a claim out on the internet that, hey, if you drink orange juice on the third Sunday of every fourth month, you're going to build muscle mass. That's
Yeah,
what I heard.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and
Oh,
you brought this up before about trusting individual pro. Well, Coach Lamby's my guy.
yeah. Yes.
So, I like everything Coach Lamby has to say. And then we have um, uh, people's own biases playing into who you want to believe. So people want to hear good things about their bad habits.
Yes.
And so, yeah, being able to critically evaluate claims that are made, specifically in the world of nutrition and diet, because it's a big deal. So people think that because I eat food, therefore I should be able to know something about this. And
Yeah.
also I can read an abstract and understand what's being said in the abstract. And so I think it'd be a good idea to help our listeners and our viewers um, understand that. And once I introduce like propositional logic, so we're talking about like syllogisms and stuff like that, and how to understand the truth value of a proposition or a claim, what an argument actually is.
Right.
Like once you have the ability to read a sentence and break down the claim that's being made and determine certain things are true and false and whether they lead to the conclusion, like it gives you like a set of truth goggles,
Yes.
and it's very the basics of it are very easy to learn. It's can be a little complicated in the beginning, but it's very easy to learn. But it's like once you have these goggles, you'll never look at anything again. And
Right.
then it actually kind of does make it hard to have conversations with people who don't think the same way
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
evaluating what they're saying based on these logic structures. And
Right.
so it can be hard. Just ask my wife.
Yeah. Well, woo.
Yeah.
So I want to throw this out there also. So a large part of the last week and a half, 2 weeks for me has been trying to get past because access to some of the things that Coach Lamby has, you have to like pay some money.
Mhm.
And so I haven't really done that yet. I guess I'm going to go ahead and have to do that. But is getting past the abstract because the abstract sounds so good, and a lot of people really don't understand what is an abstract anyway. And then some of the studies that if you're looking at it, you'll see the abstract. Wow, well, looky there. But you maybe you can't even get to the conclusion, or you can't even get to the body of the study and how the study was put together and those
Mhm.
type of things. And those things are actually really critical in making decisions about where you stand with this. I mean, I've made some crazy outlandish statements, man, I'm on the Coca-Cola diet and I've lost 50 pounds. Really? I'd like to know what that abstract said, and then let's see the body of how that works and what the conclusion is, because we see the abstract and it's like, oh yeah, look at there.
It's funny that you say that, um, because I've so what we're going to learn over the next couple of weeks is going to help people understand this. But there's often an argument made in the carnivore diet groups that, well, we have a lot of evidence that as you increase your intake of red meat increases, so does your risk of cardiovascular disease. And the argument then is to say, well, we've never really compared, this like the dietary guideline diet versus an all meat diet. So we don't really know, what the outcomes would be of an all meat diet. And we see all of these beneficial things, people are reporting all these beneficial stories, and the plural of anecdote is data. And that kind of seems to be the argument, right? Is,
Right,
well, we've never studied this diet in the context of just being an all meat diet. And
right,
so, just as a teaser, what logically entails from that then is, if you are going to say, well, we can have confidence that an all meat diet provides healthful benefits because of the anecdotes that people are reporting,
right.
right? And because we don't have any data on an all meat diet, we can infer from there health benefits from this all meat diet. And so you would have to then accept, on the same logical principle, that an all Coca-Cola diet would provide the same
Yes,
benefits, because,
yes,
well, we've never studied a diet in right?
yep, yep. It's
Yeah.
just like the green bean diet. I mean,
Uh-huh. It's sad that those types of diets actually exist. You have the
I
rice
kill my,
diet, the potato diet.
oh my gosh, I kill myself.
All right. Well, there we go, folks. I think that does it for the food coloring stuff. I have said my position on it. Dwayne, I think you feel the same way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So all the information is available to you guys. You'll have everything we looked at today will be in the show notes. You can draw your own conclusions, and you can use the upcoming lessons to help you draw those own conclusions. You don't just have to take mine and Dwayne's opinion and run with those.
Yes.
So
Yes.
maybe nothing mind-blowing today, but hope somebody got something out of this.
Oh, mine got blown all week long, so
Yeah.
I'm in there so yeah.
All right. Well, cool then. All right. So we will see you guys next week. Coach Lamby and Dwayne out.
See you guys.